So has everyone seen the Xerox copy that's out here, or at least have access to look at it?
All right.
Okay, so this is your time. You can talk about the similarities and differences between what you came up with this morning, what was presented to you by staff. I figure that's a good place to start, and then we can work into what you see as measurements for success.
Well, basically, our things fit into theirs pretty well, don't they?
That's what I was going to say. Do we see any
Quite
places?
honestly, theirs sound much better.
You worked at it longer, yeah.
I think that's better than just dots. Ease of business process.
Oh, is that yours? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought I was trying to take your drink. That's what you meant.
Yeah, just in case you need a reference material.
Does it look like we're missing anything, that there's something in one area that's missing somewhere else,
Matthew, what's your name?
or vice versa?
FISK?
What's the...
That's right.
Councilman Ross, Councilwoman Tarkanian just mentioned that she thinks that what you came up with this morning fits well into what we came up with or we presented to you this afternoon.
I mean, they have that thriving and sustainable business community, which is basically what you feel strongly about. And we had the word jobs, and then we were a little more specific, but we could add that specificity up at the top if we wanted, and use their terminology if that's the value we have.
I agree with you. I think one thing I want to leave with this, I've left it already with the entire session here, is we don't have a plan either in place for sustainable business community. We don't have a plan in place for a jobs plan, if you will. We've been doing a lot of these things, Councilwoman, already, because we've been loud to her and every other department head about what we want to see. Make it easier for businesses, make it more streamlined.
And we have been doing that,
Yeah.
right? And the businesses are reciprocating by telling us how well we're doing.
And the culture with the city employees has changed 110%. And it trickles down, and it trickles up. We talk about the pride level. Our employees have, what is it, 91% pride
to work for the city.
Well, as they should. It's a great job to have a job, number one, but it's a great job. But I think they also see we as policymakers and you as management teams getting that message out there that, take a little pride in what you're doing. These are just, we're not bureaucrats. We're customer driven, and we have to have that customer service type attitude. What did Tom call them? Technocrats? From the university? You've got to get away from that. We need to be more customer service driven. And I think right at the top, Councilwoman, you're right, thriving sustainable business community. Jobs needs to be in there somewhere.
Is this where we're supposed to see combining our values with the values and then come up with the values for the city? So that's what we could do then, right?
Well, you're right, Councilman. What we're trying to do is to make sure that there's alignment. So when you look at the topics below, do they match up with the ones up above? Is there a better way to say that have a descriptor for that general category of focus, if you will?
Well, they match. Isn't there one extra one up at the top? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One extra one at the bottom.
One extra one at the bottom.
But if you look at this, we said safe, but I know that part of what we turned in said safe and healthy.
Right.
Because that's what I did. So I
Right.
didn't sit there. And but I mean, and then we're talking about fiscal stewardship, and that's efficient, effective government. And then you have the customer service, which we both had.
Both had that.
The extra one is the work environment, world-class workforce.
And that may go with the job security too.
How do we keep education in there somewhere? Quality of life, parks, rec, education, community social customer.
The thing is this, I question. I don't know how much effect we could have on education. It is the largest bureaucracy in the country. It's been one that they've tried to change for hundreds of years, and they really haven't been able to change it that much. There are some things we can do. We're doing them now with our partnerships with them. And Carolyn had talked, somebody else had talked about starting a school maybe. We could start a model school maybe, do it with some of the funds that they have at the state. But the thing is, as far as getting in there and changing curriculum, education and what makes a difference is what's happening every single day, every minute in the curriculum.
In the classroom, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant. The curriculum is the classroom. What's happening in the classroom? It's happening in there. And I just don't know if we would have, I just think for the time we have, we wouldn't be able to have much effect on that. But we can have effect on maybe getting them to make changes.
We do have, at least in the staff level work, we had education in two different pieces of the puzzle. In the Healthy City piece of the puzzle and in the community attachment piece of the puzzle.
Right.
So although they weren't the only focus or a priority focus, they were key components to success from a staff perspective in those two areas.
Well, they are the key. I mean, everybody, Councilman Ross and Carolyn and everybody who said today that education was the key, they're absolutely right. It is the key. But
So maybe if it's,
but I just don't know how much of that we can get the key to change. And I'm not usually a pessimist.
No,
Right.
high-level discussions at her level with others. But how do we call it a world-class workforce if we're not being mindful of the education component that we lack so desperately? We can't just throw these out there and
Yeah.
hope.
Well, you know, when you talk about a world-class workforce, though, you're talking about some of those things the unions do, too. Some of their, that we would have, I think, more effect on. I think.
Are you
that
talking
that's-
like the apprenticeship programs?
Yeah,
In
yeah,
that respect, we really do have the world-class workforce.
we do.
But what about when we're talking about bringing high-tech and biotech and other, different industries? Construction is never going to go away. We're always going to need to build stuff, and we're the best at it. I
Right?
guess even in our hotels and hotel administration and culinary training, we've got still the best in the world. And those are great sectors, but how do we diversify? I mean, or maybe we're having discussions that are at the 50,000-foot level, not just focusing on.
well, it depends on, which way you want to go. It seems, from my perspective, that at the highest level, both groups had a goal for in strengthening the business community,
Okay.
which would include jobs. Both groups have that. Both groups have a focus on safe city, right?
Well, I like the healthy component.
Right, okay. So, then you've got the comprehensive fiscal stewardship, which is getting the budget balanced, which maybe is your efficient government piece of the puzzle.
Which we do.
Okay, yeah. Well, we've got a balanced one right now. And then you've got quality of life, which could be community attachment. Maybe you want to change the language on community attachment. There seemed to be some
What do you think?
discussion of that.
Before we get into the individual, I thought maybe it's good if we hear from the staff's perspective on what they heard from the council discussion. And then maybe we can jump into individual ones, because you talked, Councilman Ross, you talked about the customer service. We want to make sure that all of your concerns about customer service are addressed in that customer service piece of the recommendation. But I think it'd be helpful to hear what the staff heard from you this morning to see if there's any similarities or differences, if that's okay with the group. Just to give everyone a chance to talk.
Sure.
Great
Good
idea.
idea.
There.
That was a good point.
Great idea, but I think, when I talk about customer service, it's about culture. Government employees have that, and we're all government employees, but we're attached, we have that attachment that you're a bureaucrat. You don't care about me when I come in to talk to you or get some answers. You care about clocking in, going to lunch, and clocking out. And that's not what it's about. But that culture's changing significantly in every department.
So, all right, quiet people, somebody pipe up.
Pipe up.
I think that's the reputation. I've been here 20 years. It's never been my position. Even when I served in a union type of a position, the biggest problem people had was I was here after hours. I'd worked in my lunch hour. And I find that 90% of the people I come in contact with and have come in contact with over 20 years have been like that. I know
Go the
Karen
extra
came
mile.
all the way up through the ranks and has held so many positions, and I've known her for years and years, and she's never been like that. But I think what you're right about is how do we get past the perception that that's what it's like? We get letters all the time complimenting our deputies and the people in our office on the great service they give, and they're almost surprised about it. But I know we're not unique. Right. So how do we get the message out? I
But Joe
sometimes...
Public doesn't always deal with the deputy. They deal with the person at the front counter, or the first desk they come to, or they dial the general phone number, and they get shuffled around, and no one has the right answer.
I think it's almost as though we have to create a conduit, because some of the best information that we get come from the line staff. And we're so conditioned. It was mentioned a few times this morning about, to some degree, we're almost our own worst enemy by way of regulation. And that as we hear the impact that this has
That's our restriction, is us.
on our customer, we need that information to flow, not just upward, but outward in the organization, so that we all have a chance to kind of ponder that, because we know we can do better. We know we can do better, but if not armed with it, but for a complaint letter here and a random comment there or a survey here, when do we start to be able, when do we have the opportunity to learn those things and really make a true difference?
So can I just ask the question, from what we presented or what was presented in the presentation this morning and what you discussed, are the words and the actions that staff is recommending, do they adequately address what Karen and Vic are talking about? Do they address the cultural change that you think needs to happen or is happening?
I think they do.
You guys said
I honestly
today. It
think they do.
looks like it lines up pretty well.
We're getting to where we need to be. Customer service excellence. If that is an ongoing theme in every department from the first day I hire on in the city, that's just driven in me. I mean, feeding me like to no end. So I'm customer service friendly. If I'm giving you a parking ticket, I'm going to do it with a smile. You know what I mean?
So from a council perspective, it sounds like...
Another name for that one.
I know. You see where I'm going.
I want to just comment. From a council perspective, it sounds like staff hit the nail on the head with the priority for customer
I think they did.
service.
Customer service
excellence.
excellence.
Right.
I like it. I actually am very...
I think you're right.
If we can build in there other things, I mean, that's a great, that's a statement. But thriving and sustainable business community. What does it say about jobs? What does that tell Joe Public that, the city of Las Vegas is serious about job creation?
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because Bill has been talking with me about, trying to be a lot more specific about what we mean by that. One of his goals is to create 5,000 jobs in 5 years. See, that starts to get your arm, in my opinion, it gets your arms around what that means. It's also the work that's been going on in the Development Services Center.
It means a goal
We've
you can
reduced half
measure
of our,
too, right?
we've reduced half of our turnaround. We've cut in half our turnaround times. We're getting ready to streamline all our business licenses. So I think we can craft some measures for you in those areas that are in this presentation. If this is the right priority area for you, when you look at these bullet points on thriving and sustainable business, if we were able to make them more measurable, or have measures affiliated with these goals, would we be on point, or do we need to add things here, or did we put things here that aren't important to you that need to be?
I don't think add.
Okay.
I think this is right on the money.
I mean, that's a lot of stuff. That's 9 things.
But how do you get that message to the public? When you just say thriving and sustainable business community.
I think on the jobs, one thing that stuck with me is when the Cobalt survey, they benchmarked Las Vegas compared to the other cities, and where we lagged was quality jobs. And if you look at our unemployment rate, even though we're foreclosure capital, we have high unemployment, there are other cities, San Jose, their unemployment rate's almost as high as ours. But they've had the quality jobs, they've had the diversity of jobs, and so it's defining, under the next layer, what do you add on to jobs? It's more than just quantity, it's quality.
Do we have control over the fact that we are a service-oriented industry with gaming and tourism? We need dishwashers. We need porters.
You need
we need
both.
housekeepers.
You need both. You need the...
We have call centers here. We need people on the phones. We haven't created that diverse economy where we've got high-paying different sector jobs.
But you have one. you guys as a council have had conversations, even when we are attracting some of those call center type businesses. You've always asked, are you going to be paying living wage to a diversion? I mean, and are you going to be providing health benefits?
Yes, we have.
So you're not saying bring these in at, the minimum wage and don't give anybody anything else and they only get 20 hours or less a week. You're actually saying create a sustainable work environment for individuals who need a job and have that skill set.
And you offset perception with numbers. You offset perception with truth, basically, by giving them, this is where we started with at this point, and here's where we are today. And that's where I was going with the customer service. If you have specific measurable or jobs, either one, and you have specific measurements for where we are today and at the end of 2011 and where we are at the end of 2012, and you show that growth, which we've continued to move with, even during these bad economics, that's how you counter the perception.
I agree with the numbers, but what else can counter the perception is experience. When
Personal
that customer
experience.
comes in and pulls a number, and there's someone smiling at the counter, what can I do for you? How can I help you?
And that's where the rubber meets the road, because
Bingo.
that's
But we have it at our development center now. I went over there a few
I think we got to
times.
go around that way.
We do, and it's getting better, Councilwoman.
And I've had people with whom I work. I had somebody helping me building, renovating what I have at home, and he was telling me how much better the city people were to work with, and how much better that development center was in helping the people in construction. And he said a lot of the construction people feel that way.
I'll tell you, not to get us off track, but my neighbor, who's an electrician, stopped me in the road the other day and said, I don't know what you guys are doing down there, but it is working, and keep it up, because it is becoming so much easier to do
Right.
business in the city
Right.
than we've ever experienced, and it is great, thank you. You know how often you get those thank yous, not very.
No, not very, but let's just, if we go back, if we're supposed to bring these values and see if they mesh, David here helped a lot. We've got 6 that match, and then you have the 7th one, which is the ethics part of it,
Right.
which might go in both areas.
It should guide both, I would think, right? I mean, you need to
Oh,
embody those
absolutely,
when you're doing
absolutely,
these priorities, right?
absolutely. So in other words, it would be added as a 7th one, is what we thought.
Would it be a 7th, or would it be, because what we were thinking was that those principles of honest, fair, and open might be included in the values, or could be woven into the values if they're not clean enough. Those statements I just went over.
If that's what works best for how you're
'Cause those
organizing
should
it, as long as it's addressing the
affect everything is what you're saying, Beth. This
Yeah,
should impact
all
everything
those
we do.
things, including, transparency and all those other things that we talk about should be in those values.
So that would be something that could go over there. But
Yeah.
if you look at, you can see, if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on each of the things mentioned by staff, you have, under council priority exercise, you have 3 that is the same as number 2 up here, jobs, which is the same as number 1, 3, which is the same as number,
This is a 3 here is the same as 3. A comprehensive
Yeah.
fiscal
Go
stewardship
ahead.
is the same as efficient government.
right.
They all line
So-
up.
But the lineup is what I'm trying to say,
Okay.
but that's what you want to get done before your 45 minutes.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of similarities between both lists, and it sounds like at least for a couple of them we hit the nail on the head. Maybe need to add the word jobs or quantified jobs.
Well, just think about this, where it says thriving sustainable business community.
You're creating
Add
jobs.
5,000 jobs in 5 years. That's all we add to that. That includes Bill's goal.
I have a
his department.
suggestion. Let's just make that as a key measure. Because when we bring this back to you, you're going to have the title. You're going to have goal areas, which these need some work on based on our conversation today. The bullet points that are outlined in the PowerPoint. And then we need to have some key measures. One of the second pieces of this conversation, Brian just hasn't gotten us there yet, is that we need to know we need to define our success. So are we saying success is 5,000 jobs in 5 years? That's a measure. You know what I mean? So there's a place for that, for us to
Well,
be able
I'm
to
just throwing that out there as
buy it.
to throw the jobs element in it.
You also
Take jobs
mentioned,
seriously.
you also mentioned a plan. That what is the plan to get us there? So maybe that's
What
a
is
key
the jobs
component
plan
of
to
the
get us
plan.
there? Yeah.
Be-
And
Before
does that, maybe that falls underneath.
Develop a jobs plan.
Right. Before we move on to the measurement, which I think we're probably there now, because we do have some similarities. Matt's new to the team, and this is his first experience with this kind of environment. So maybe he can talk about his perspective on what he heard this morning and what staff presented to him a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, yeah, if I could just come in as kind of a new outsider. I was looking at my partner's list here, and I saw a lot of similarities. And I think I was able to merge some of these phrases,
Oh, good.
mostly commonalities. I tried to sum it up in 4 different phrases with a kind of a title phrase. I don't know, you can read that from there, so I'll read it. And trust me, I mean, please, the words probably need to come out, but I have as a title, a mutually supportive community, private, and government collaboration. I was using the word attachment, and I heard discussion on that this morning. So, and then point 1 is community, so they correspond. A safe and healthy community. Point 2, private, thriving, sustainable business community. Point 3, government, efficient and effective customer service-oriented stewardship. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. And 4, this is really what it yields, a rich and diverse culture, education, and recreation. Needs a little bit of work, but of course we're missing a plan for each of those and measures. So basically I'm just trying to merge some of those into less. I don't think I'm missing anything, but not having been here, I don't know where your focus is.
Right.
So.
The only thing I didn't see, wasn't clear to me, but that may have been included in there, was the world-class workforce for the employees.
Okay.
Because that was something that really was a key piece
Stood
of
out.
what came out of the employees as something we need to focus on from a cultural standpoint. But, you know, that maybe could be number 5, I don't know, number 5 or something.
So it probably deserves its own section also.
Just because it needs a lot of work, and it may be something, you know, 2 or 3 years from now we make major progress, and it's a part of the way we do business, and maybe changes, morphs the way it's written.
So it sounds like we have a pretty good consensus between what staff presented, what council talked about this morning. So the next step really is to more clearly define or identify some 1 or 2 key measurement areas so that staff understands your perspective and you understand staff's perspective.
Before we move on, I just had a question for Councilman and Councilwoman. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the world-class workforce. That is kind of a different approach than what we did previously with our prior priorities. So I was just curious what you thought on that.
Is it empty? Tell us about our world-class workforce. Tell us about it. Tell me, as a new company thinking about moving into Vegas, tell me about your world-class workforce. What do you got?
Well, that's my point. That is it going to be world-class workforce for the city, or are we going to make it the city as well as the business communities?
Well, I think
Staff's presentation to you included world-class workforce as city employees.
Well, city
That's
employees.
what they were talking about.
Internally.
Now, it could be both.
That's not how I read that.
Now,
No,
it could be both, though. If we lead by example and we're a customer service, we lead in excellence, and we are the
should be
model for
creating a
world-class
world-class workforce. Or are we talking about our city employees? What are we trying to
Well,
do?
we have 2 different things going on here. So one, world-class workforce. The presentation this morning included city employees. When you're talking about creating a world-class workforce, my perspective is I align that with a thriving and sustainable business community and
That's what I
creating jobs.
think too.
Okay.
But that's a perspective.
But
Let me throw something out that I'm not part of this, so it's the first time I'm part of it. But what I'm hearing in my mind are 2 things: priorities and tools to achieve the priorities. To me, the priorities have always been, in my mind, valley-wide that affect the citizens of the city of Las Vegas. The tools are the things that get you there. So the world-class workforce, to me, is the tool, the city tool. Those are city employees. We're not talking about valley-wide. The world-class workforce that came up here is city employees only. And so that's a tool to get the rest of your priorities. So I don't think that should be a priority. I think every priority ought to be valley-wide, so jobs, that's the big hairy one.
But if we did a good job helping businesses
Safety.
thrive and sustain, then they should have, as a point, the world-class.
Right.
Then what that means to me
Right,
though, Councilwoman,
exactly.
is you're saying world-class workforce isn't just our employees, it's everybody's. So it'd be workforce development, it'd be education, it'd be all those
Priorities
things.
down to
Well,
3 or
That's
4.
Except
interesting.
some things we could do better and quicker
Than
than
others.
others are.
Well, and what is the whole idea behind this these statements? What's the whole idea behind the statements? To sell what we got?
To
What do we
get us
got?
focused on the right things to
Yeah.
make you guys, to be successful in the things that you want us to be successful in.
And I think staff's got it. It's how do we refine that?
And to be blunt, to lock yourselves into 3 or 4 things that you don't get lost track of. Because if you come up with a 5th and a 6th, staff should be able to come up with you and say, we didn't budget for a 5th or a 6th.
Yeah.
We geared our workforce for these 4 priorities. And so it helps discipline the council as well, to be perfectly blunt.
Well, it keeps us focused as well.
Right. So whatever you come up with, kind of hang yourself on your own petard here, because that's
Well, let's
it.
take this. Let's talk about this world-class workforce a little bit more.
Let's maybe if we define it and identify what the measurements are, the 1 or 2 key things, that'll probably help drive the discussion.
Okay, I think we got the world-class workforce within the city, but when Joe Public sees this, they're not thinking about city employees. When Joe Prospective Business looks at this about moving his corporation here, he doesn't see that. He sees, there's a world-class workforce out there for me when I move my company.
Well, you could put down world-class city workforce.
You can, but we're getting narrow again. We don't want to be
But
narrow.
that's for this one, you're still leaving that other one, which is a broad one, but that's okay. Oops, sorry.
Mayor, we're discussing the world-class workforce. And in staff's presentation to us, the world-class workforce was our own employees. But as you and I sit on the LVCBA, and we're trying to sell the city, sell all of Southern Nevada, what does that tell Joe Business? What does that tell prospective new corporation moving to Vegas? We have a world-class workforce?
Right. That's what I said over there.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a...
So,
it's
Well, that's why I asked the
going
question. I
towards-
sensed there was a disconnect, and
I have to tell you a quick cheat, because if I cheated for them, I'm going to cheat for you. Randy came up with a concept for community attachment,
okay.
community connection. Great. So that's why
I
we're
will
also...
cry. I will cry.
Well, that's what they did over there too. So, but I just want you to know when you hear a great idea.
He came
So
from-
whether you like it or not, if I'm going to cheat for them, I'm cheating for you.
So the
All right,
question
so back
then
to
is,
this.
is
back to
this
the world-class workforce.
internally or externally or
Let's
broadly
go around the
focused?
table and just see what everybody's perspective is, because yours is we should have an external focus.
It's external. It's an external message, and I think that's what this whole statement is the city's external message to tell people who we are, what we represent, and what our priorities are as a council.
Let me ask.
Devil's advocate for a moment?
Yes.
How do you as a council create a world-class workforce? Talking about college, talking about elementary
Yeah,
school,
well, good
grade school,
point.
but you have control over none of them.
We don't. Or
So
education.
why offer it if you can't produce it?
Can I ask?
That's why, being blunt.
Okay.
Can I ask the question
Be that way.
from a group perspective? Everybody has to weigh in on this one. So, world-class workforce, is there potential to leave world-class workforce as part of the thriving and sustainable business community, and leave world-class workforce as city employees as well? Or are you suggesting that world-class workforce is just expanded to everything, and we have a larger focus? So there's 2 questions, and I think we should just go around the table because this is going to be a point of disconnect, I think, with other groups as well. So just
Mine's a larger focus.
Okay.
Chicken.
Councilwoman?
No, I was just...
I believe that we have to have a focus on the world-class city workforce over which we can, in a shorter period of time, have strong influence. We also need to include world-class workforce under our business, thriving and sustainable business community. Then that is something we can influence. We may not be able to change it now, but we can influence. And I just think there's one thing we can change, and we can change it sooner, and there's another thing that we can start influencing sooner, but I don't know if we can change it because of all the different people. So I think it should be in both places, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
One is okay.
I can agree with that.
David, what's your perspective?
You know, I think that when we looked at this initially, we were talking about a world-class workforce being the city employees. The councilman raises a good issue. If these are up on the elevator or wherever they're going to be on our website, telling the world these are the city's priorities as directed by the council, the confusion, you bring up a good point. They may look at that and think we're talking about the valley as a whole. So maybe where that could go, I mean, I think that the employees felt that if we're going to make an impact, we need to have a first-rate, world-class workforce. Our employees need to be the best. But maybe that rolls up under customer service excellence. Maybe that part of being a great customer service organization is that you've got world-class employees. You've got the employees that can get the work done. Maybe that's where that rolls up. I think you bring up a good point, Councilman, in that everything else is focused externally except for that one.
Yeah. And that's what the facilitator is saying this morning, to look for other markets, not to be just internally focused. So.
Vicki?
I kind of agree with the councilwoman for two reasons. I think that the world-class workforce externally is covered under the thriving and sustainable. I think that's kind of what's the intent. And I think that the world-class workforce and keeping it focused internally actually does two things. First of all, it's something we have direct control over immediately. And second of all, I think it acknowledges our staff. It gives that respect and that recognition that we talked about being a high priority in addition to job security, which we may not be able to guarantee. It gives that recognition and that respect, and it puts our staff straight out front, right on every statement we make on the elevator, on the billboards, everywhere. So that's it.
Okay, very quickly, Bill and Karen, and then we'll move on to measurements.
I kind of agree with David. I think you can link customer service excellence to world-class workforce. You think of Zappos, their model, powered by service, and they're all about their employees. So if you're getting the service right, you need world-class workforce. I agree with Brad. It's really the means to an end. Really, it's a tool to get to your sustainable business community, but it is. Even if it's not a separate priority, it should be something under that first priority, because we're going to need that. Arizona State University, they're a great example. They put a lot of effort on creating graduates that can be employed quickly. They're training for skills that are needed in the workforce, and they've been recognized by it. So we can have a lot of influence in that area, and we're going to need to hit the goals under number one.
I kind of will confess that I revert back to an old way of thinking, creating that world-class city, Las Vegas, right? And so I think, as a for instance, every day when I'm getting off the freeway downtown, I can't help as I see the lights, which still excite me to this day, how many people are showing up here today for their vacation experience, and that it really begins from the moment they get on the plane when they leave home, and there's the rowdy crowd on the plane that's going to Vegas, and what they experience at every level along the way. And so I think in much broader terms, I think we can certainly set the foundation with our own employees, but we have to talk a little bit more about what that means. Does it mean the educational piece, and do we start to build that into our promotional processes, or is it more of an experience? Is it a combination of both? I would like to see us, I know focus is really important here, but I wouldn't want to cut ourselves short at looking at this from a very broad perspective. We talked about some great programs that, the apprenticeships that exist, that maybe we could mirror some of those within our own organization and promote those. And
are we going to reevaluate this on a regular basis, though? I mean, maybe what might be the goal now will broaden the next time we look at this. I just don't know.
I think that's the plan. To revisit this every other year or thereabouts. Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a couple of options, but maybe it's something we can bring back to the larger group. That this is something that deserves attention from everybody, and especially all the council members, and it may be something that comes up in the other groups as well.
One of our points of discussion, Councilman, this morning was, and it's something that we all have experienced multiple times. How do we deal with issues when we're not necessarily in control of our own destiny or the dollars that are necessary to fund those programs? And that's going to be an ongoing challenge.
About 10 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Two things. Listening, because I'm late to the table. One is listening to you creating a world-class workforce. Or if you're talking about the city, then you could say world-class city workforce. But to promote that we have a world-class workforce today,
I was going to say, I was on a committee with Elaine Wynn one time, and a bunch of educators, and she wanted to say 100% every child would read. 100% every child would read. And that's a commendable goal, and I would be all for it. But I know every child's not going to read. And I couldn't take the response. I could not put my name down and say, I'm going to say that every child will read. And I don't know if we have enough, as you were saying, to have the influence on the other to be able to take that responsibility. Am I interpreting that right?
No, I think, too, you're an educator. Elaine Wynn's well-meaning. She's not an educator. So for her to have made the statement which you're addressing, it's just, what is this a promotional piece that we're selling the rest of the world? Or is this a tool to enthuse everybody in the city? And what we're about as, let's say, the commissioners pick it up at Clark County, are they bragging that they have a world-class city workforce, a professional world-class city workforce? Yes, we do. We have the best.
Since we're running out of time, I think we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, and you have to get to success.
I know. Let's talk about success. I think we've talked a little bit about it with the thriving sustainable business community. At least Bill's mentioned 5,000 jobs in 5 years. We have some measurement of success that I don't know if anybody's going to disagree with it. If there's others, let me know. What about safe and healthy city? From a
part of success?
As part of success, from a council member's perspective, how do you define a safe and healthy city? What's successful to you?
Well, for this to be a sales piece, we want to sell that this is a safe and healthy city. People want to move to, what were the 3 things you first showed in your little
Attachment.
1962 video cartoon? Pretty neighborhoods, safe neighborhoods. I can't remember what the third one was.
Pretty. Aesthetic, yeah.
Pretty, attachment.
Yes.
People were attached to the community. It was a beautiful place to live.
Oh, social.
Healthy.
Social interaction, yeah.
With all due respect, when you list the success, that's the sales piece. The priorities are not a sales piece. Priorities are a way management is going to align your budget to these 4 priorities.
Okay, good
Every
point.
vote you take in the future will have to fall under one of these 4, or it's superfluous, and there better be extra money for it. So this is a real performance standard. Everything will follow the. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
That brings us back to reality.
Some
Yeah.
performance works.
Some of the data sets that we've talked about when we've been discussing this are like when you talk about safe and healthy city, violent crime rates per 1,000 individuals.
Yeah,
You
that's
wanna
what I
have
was going to say.
like a
Yeah.
specific measurement that says this means we're safe because we have this data that supports it. Are there things like that that jump out for you when you think of safe and healthy city?
And if I could give you just a little background on the development of that definition, as the group kind of waded through all of the input that we got from all the employees, a couple things that drove the discussion were, what makes you feel safe? How do you feel safe? I could be in a neighborhood, as a for instance, where the buildings are abandoned, where there's a police officer on every corner, but because it's dirty, the buildings are abandoned, all of these other things, even though the police officer is right there, I really don't feel safe. Where do I feel safe? Where it's clean, where it's well lit, where there are thriving, city center business going on, lots of people.
Is that a perception or a reality? Cleanliness is a perception sometimes it's a
Certainly.
reality. Yeah.
It just comes along with how would you describe to somebody what makes you feel safe? And it's not necessarily that there's a police officer or an ambulance right on the corner, because we have many areas where we do have those, and perhaps the folks living right there don't feel safe.
There are some statistics in safety and health.
Right.
I mean, health has them too, the different diseases, how we compare.
But the key
We are
is
recording this, so we need
the
one
focus
conversation.
on these items where we're going to put the money is the key, if we're not making those marks.
Yeah.
So it does go back to the professional workforce. The workforce takes up, the city workforce takes up 80% of the budget, 70%, something. So a professional, first-class workforce, city workforce. You can't speak of anybody else's workforce. Because if we haven't put enough money in it, according to Brad,
Focus on the city's workforce.
Right.
Who our people are. I think like Zappos. I think about our people that work in the city.
and a line city, make it city workforce.
And
That
then
you
when you
brag
get a
about.
world-class city workforce, go for the next. Get the universe.
Councilwoman just mentioned the fiscal stewardship. Are there anything that jumps out to your mind for what to you means fiscal stewardship in our city?
Responsible and efficient.
Let's say man in the
That's
flag.
comprehensive fiscal responsibility.
5 more minutes?
We're
Yeah.
fiscally responsible. We're very fiscally responsible. Despite what some of that survey showed, the city of Las Vegas is by far the leader in being fiscally responsible. Is stewardship the right word, or are we responsible?
Or government. It's government.
Well, wouldn't it be,
Efficient, effective government.
A balanced
Yeah, down here. Well, we have
But that
efficient,
comes
I
with an
have
efficient
effective.
government. You want to
Sorry,
be
but
global,
this-
you don't want to get down to too specific.
I would like for us to have a balanced budget.
But isn't that part of an efficient government, a fiscally efficient government? They would have a.
Me in the black.
Yeah,
Sounds
it's
good.
it's like,
Sometimes you can't have
efficient and
it.
effective, remember, efficient and effective are in your mission. That's
Right.
how we do business. So yes, absolutely. But when you're talking about fiscal, what do you guys call it?
Stewardship,
Fiscal
well, then-
stewardship or responsibility or whatever it is, aren't you really talking about being able to deliver the having enough resources to deliver the services the citizens need and want, right? You have enough resources to deliver what they need and want. That's fiscal stewardship in my opinion, in the most efficient manner.
How are you going to measure that?
Balanced
Balanced
budget.
budget? Well, that's a,
Right, having a balanced budget, one that's,
Performance measures,
you
they're
know,
already in place.
you eliminate the deficit, you could say it any.
well, I thought that would fall under your workforce, would be the,
Maybe there's a certain amount of reserve. You always have a certain amount of reserve as part of that.
Isn't that too specific though? I mean, aren't we supposed to be global?
Well, remember that you're gonna have some measures that we're gonna have to tag
Right.
onto this plan. So things like an amount of reserve can be a measure.
That falls.
Bond rating can be a measure.
that's right.
Those are all measures of your success in this area of fiscal responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
So isn't it
Now
the
you got
global?
some measurements there, Brian.
That all that
We do.
Okay, so next was what your,
Community
Can
attachment
fit
is
under
nice.
this. It can fit under that.
Which we, down here was quality of life.
Connected.
Customer service driven.
Connected with the.
connectedness.
In our last couple of minutes, are there, I think we have time to talk about one more. We have community attachment or customer service. Is there one that you want to talk about?
I want to talk about both. Is it
Okay.
community attachment? Remember we had a nice little discussion about attachment? What about just community pride? Building community pride?
What did I cheat and bring over
Connection,
to the other
community
table?
connection.
Community
Connection.
connections. Building community connections.
Which means an involvement of the
That's
people
right.
in,
Which means the number of your neighborhood associations, the effectiveness of your neighborhood
connection. The
associations,
people are
the
connected to your
volunteers
community.
Building.
that are coming.
Power
Is there anything that would
could do that
help you
by-
measure that? How would you know if a community had pride or if it was connected or if it was attached?
How
Any
would you
specific?
know? Because of their involvement in community service, social
Volunteerism.
services,
Volunteerism, yeah.
volunteerism, participation in government, coming to meetings.
Certainly, there's no shortage of people that come to any of our events that we put on the city. Your events, Councilman Barlow's events, the events out in Ward 6, hundreds and thousands of people come to those events.
They do?
It's
They do?
huge. Our outreach as a city council is phenomenal.
Councilwoman says especially if there's food there, so they really come then.
Then we get there for the-
Can we wrap up?
Yeah.
Each of the
Customer
groups?
service, excellence.
Remember, each group
customer
needs a
service
spokesperson.
Driven.
Driven.
Customer service driven.
culture.
I like that.
Right.
In world-class workforce, you've already got your performance
Hey, Brian,
plus as far as.
write down a
evaluating
world-class
your
city
workforce,
that-
right?
That and,
that Karen alluded to from our past. We're still a world-class city. We can't lose sight of that. We promote that.
it's in your mission. It's in your vision.
No, and you were right. You were
It's a
obviously
division,
right. The thing is,
not the
there are
mission
these
statement.
things that are going to get a piece
These
of
are our
pie.
values.
A world-class.
Because one thing I would keep
Got
in
it.
mind is the last few times that
These are
council
our
has done
principles.
this, normally, if a corporation were to do this, and you were a board of directors, you would come up with 2 or 3, maybe 4 priorities. Because we have 7 council members, it's no accident, we had 7 priorities. If you guys would get this down to 3 or 4, it would
think
be
we can.
really, really
What do
good.
you think?
Nice and
So
tight.
maybe
I'm
we've
happy,
already,
very
I'm
good.
happy that we're not at 7 and that we're back up to 6, 5 or 6.
I think we
because
can shorten that.
Yeah.
We want to reconvene up
Okay.
Good
front.
luck.
This is
Yes.
somebody, I don't know,